When God moves, everything changes. There are moments in life when heaven bends low, when the wind of God begins to stir in the unseen places, when something begins to shift, even before your eyes notice it. And I believe, with everything inside of me, that you are standing in such a moment right now. Not yesterday, not one day in the future, but this very moment, God is moving in your life. And when God moves, the story changes. When God moves, the burden breaks. When God moves, the impossible becomes the inevitable. I want to begin with a story about a woman who carried the weight of years on her shoulders. Her life had been nothing but collapse after collapse, prayer after prayer with seemingly no answer. One night, she sat alone whispering, "God, do you still see me?" And in that small whisper, something shifted. Not outside, not in her money, not in her relationships, not in her health, but inside her spirit she felt something rise. She said later, "I don't know what changed that night, but I knew God had begun to move." Within months, the very prayers she cried over for years came rushing to her doorstep. Breakthrough after breakthrough. It didn't happen because she worked harder. It happened because God moved. My friend, I tell you this because the same God who moved for her is moving for you. You didn't come here by accident. You didn't press play by coincidence. There is a divine appointment attached to these words. Something in your life, something heavy, something painful, something holy, is about to shift. And before this message ends, you will know deep in your spirit, your victory is not on the way. Your victory is here. God is moving for you now. And today, I want to walk with you through 7 life-changing revelations, unfolding like chapters of your own spiritual awakening. A journey of faith, courage, belief, restoration, and inner transformation. Let your heart stay open. Let your spirit breathe. Because God is about to speak. When God moves, the invisible begins before the visible appears. When God begins to move in your life, the first signs are almost never visible to the natural eye. They don't show up in your bank account. They don't show up in your relationships. They don't show up in your circumstances. And they don't show up in the places you expect to see change. They begin deep within the unseen realm, the spiritual soil where God does His greatest work. And this is where many people become discouraged, because we have been conditioned to believe that if we can't see progress, progress isn't happening. But God does not start His miracles in the light, He begins them in the dark. Just like a seed must first be buried before it can rise, your breakthrough begins in the invisible, before it ever touches the visible. Think about the many times in Scripture when God was moving long before anyone realized it. Moses stood before the Red Sea with no sign that the waters would part. To everyone watching, it looked like a dead end. But in heaven, the miracle had already been initiated. God was already commanding the wind, already preparing the pathway, already planning the timing. The visible breakthrough simply had to catch up with the invisible work that God had already begun. And the same is happening in your life right now. You might feel stuck, you might feel paused, you might feel forgotten, but God has not stopped moving. In fact, He is doing more behind the scenes than you can imagine. The problem is not that God is silent. The problem is that we mistake silence for inactivity. Just because God hasn't spoken yet does not mean He isn't working. Just because nothing external has shifted does not mean everything internal isn't aligning. Sometimes the greatest evidence that God is working is the fact that you are still standing, still hoping, still believing, still holding on. That inner strength, that quiet resilience, that is God moving inside you before He moves around you. Every person God ever used went through a season where everything looked still, while everything spiritual was in motion. Joseph lived years in a prison that looked stagnant, yet heaven was orchestrating the chain of events that would elevate him in one single day. Hannah cried for years with no visible answer, yet God was forming a prophet inside her womb. David hid in caves while God was shaping him into a king. The visible world looked unchanged, but the invisible world was alive with divine activity. And you, yes, you, are in that same sacred place. You are in the preparation stage of your miracle. You are in the environment where God is forming what you asked for. You are in the unseen workshop of heaven, where your blessing is being structured, strengthened, and made ready. Do not despise this season. Do not misinterpret this quietness. Do not walk away just because the surface looks still. Remember, the deeper the root, the stronger the tree. When God hides you, it is never to hurt you. It is to anchor you so deeply that when the visible blessing arrives, you will not be shaken by it. There are things God must grow inside you before He can release what is outside of you. Patience, faith, endurance, clarity, wisdom, resilience, trust. These qualities cannot be delivered. They must be developed. And development always happens in places that feel slow, hidden, and silent. This is why the invisible season is not a punishment. It is a process. And processes are proof of God's love, not His distance. Only a God who cares deeply about your destiny takes this much time to prepare you for what is coming. Imagine a seed underground. If you judged it from the surface, you would say nothing is happening. But something is happening. Life is forming. It is stretching, breaking, pressing, expanding. It is pushing through the soil. It is preparing for exposure. And one day, without warning, it breaks through the surface. That moment looks sudden to everyone watching, but it was never sudden. It was simply invisible until it was ready. That is how your victory will appear. Suddenly, unexpectedly, shockingly. Not because it came out of nowhere, but because it came from the invisible realm, where God has been working all along. Before you see it, heaven has already declared it. Before you touch it, the angels have already prepared it. Before you walk into it, God has already finished it. So lift your head, breathe again, hold your faith. The invisible work is not a delay. It is the birthplace of the visible miracle. And when God moves there first, nothing can stop what will soon appear in your life. Your breakthrough has already begun. God breaks you before He builds you. And it's a holy breaking. There is a kind of breaking that does not destroy you but transforms you. A breaking that does not crush your spirit but awakens it. A breaking that does not leave you empty, but makes room for something greater. This is the holy breaking of God. The sacred moment when He removes what no longer serves your destiny, so He can rebuild you into who you were always meant to become. And though this breaking is painful, confusing, and often misunderstood, it is one of the clearest signs that God is moving powerfully in your life. You see, we all carry pieces of ourselves that were shaped by wounds, disappointments, fears, wrong environments, unhealthy relationships, or years of survival mode living. These pieces become part of our identity, part of our thinking, part of our reactions. But they were never meant to stay. So when God prepares you for a new season, He begins by breaking away the parts of you that cannot enter that new season. Not because these parts make you unworthy, but because they are too small for the calling placed upon your life. This holy breaking may look like loss. It may feel like confusion. It may sound like silence. It may hurt like heartbreak. It may appear as doors shutting, opportunities fading, friendships ending, or environments shifting. But what looks like life falling apart is often God pulling apart what held you back. He is not breaking you to punish you. He is breaking you to free you. Think of the story of the potter and the clay. When a potter sees a flaw in the clay vessel, he does not ignore it. He breaks it down, softens it again, and reshapes it. Why? Because he sees what the clay cannot see, its potential. He knows what it can become, and He knows what must be removed for that transformation to happen. God is the same with us. When He allows certain things to break, it is because He sees the next version of you. The stronger, wiser, freer you. The you who can hold the blessing He's preparing. And sometimes the old container simply cannot carry the new anointing. Many people misinterpret this season. They think, why is God letting me go through this? Why is everything breaking? Why do I feel stripped, vulnerable, uncertain? But what if the breaking is actually the greatest sign that God is near? What if the chaos is a sign that construction has begun? Ask a builder. No building begins without breaking ground first. No new foundation is laid without removing the old one. No new structure rises until the old one is torn down. The breaking is not destruction, it is preparation. Some of you are losing people you thought would stay forever. Some are watching dreams shift into new directions. Some are shedding old habits or walking away from toxic environments. Some feel like the ground beneath you is changing and you don't know how to stand. But hear this truth: God does not break anything. He does not intend to rebuild stronger. The areas of your life that feel like they are collapsing are actually being cleared for reconstruction. This breaking also happens inside, in your thinking, your beliefs, your emotional patterns, your identity. God begins to confront the lies you believed about yourself. He challenges your fears. He pulls up the roots of insecurity. He exposes the places where your trust was in people instead of Him. And though this inner breaking can feel like a spiritual earthquake, it is the kindness of God reshaping your foundation. You cannot carry a giant-sized destiny with a fragile mindset. You cannot step into supernatural opportunity with self-limiting beliefs. You cannot rise with the weight of old wounds still clinging to your soul. So He breaks, not to hurt you, but to heal you. There is also a breaking that happens to your pride, your self-sufficiency, your need to control every outcome. This breaking is the hardest because it requires surrender, real surrender, not just words. It requires letting go of the life you imagine to embrace the life God planned. It requires trusting Him even when your understanding fails. It requires saying, God, I don't know what you're doing, but I trust you. And guess what? That moment of humility, that moment of surrender, that moment of vulnerability, that is the birthplace of miracles. When God breaks you, He is not reducing you, He is refining you. He is shaping you into a vessel that can carry more wisdom, more faith, more clarity, more purpose, more power. He breaks you so He can bless you. He breaks you so He can rebuild you. He breaks you so He can release the version of you that the world desperately needs. So if you feel broken right now, don't despair, don't run, don't give up. You are not being destroyed. You are being transformed. You are in the hands of the potter, and His hands are gentle. His breaking is holy. His breaking is purposeful. His breaking is love. And when He is finished, you will not be the same. You will be stronger, wiser, freer, and ready for the victory He has already prepared for you. When your faith is tired, God carries you to the next chapter. There comes a moment in every believer's journey when faith feels heavy, when strength feels small, and when hope feels like something you have to drag rather than something that lifts you. These moments can feel like failure, like weakness, like something is wrong with you. But hear me clearly, every great person of faith has walked through a season where their faith felt tired. Faith is not a constant mountain. Sometimes it is a trembling whisper. Sometimes it is a flickering flame. Sometimes it is a sigh more than a shout. And yet, even in that fragile state, God moves. When your faith is tired, God does not rebuke you, He carries you. When your belief is wavering, God does not step back, He steps closer. When your strength is depleted, God does not demand more effort, He pours in more grace. God knows that there are seasons where your spirit is weary from the battles you've been fighting, the prayers you've been praying, the tears you've been crying, and the storms you've been weathering. He knows there are days when you are not standing tall like a warrior, but leaning like someone desperately trying to stay upright. And it is in these moments that God reveals one of the deepest truths of His character. He does not need your strength to move. He only needs your surrender. Think about Elijah. a prophet full of fire and boldness, who called down rain, performed miracles, and stood against kings. Yet there came a moment where he ran into the wilderness, collapsed under a tree, and said, "I can't do this anymore." His faith was exhausted. His spirit was drained. His heart was overwhelmed. And God did not lecture him. God did not condemn him. God sent an angel to feed him, strengthen him, restore him, and remind him that his journey was not over. Elijah thought he was finished, but God said, "No, this is just the middle. Your story continues." Your tired faith is not the end of your story either. It is a chapter, a valley, a moment where God lifts you in ways you don't even realize. In fact, some of the greatest moves of God happen not when you are strong, but when you are too weak to carry yourself. That is when you see God carry you. You may not feel like you are moving forward, but God is moving you forward. You may not feel like you are growing, but God is growing something inside you. You may not feel like you are surviving, but God is sustaining you in ways your eyes cannot comprehend. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not walking on water. It is simply not sinking under the weight of your present storm. Sometimes the victory is that you are still here, still breathing, still fighting, still holding on, even if by a thread. When your faith is tired, God becomes your strength. When your hope is fading, God becomes your anchor. When your courage feels gone, God becomes your shield. When your prayers feel empty, God becomes your voice. Some seasons are not about your ability to climb. They are about your ability to rest in God's arms while He climbs for you. There are moments when God whispers to you, "Let me carry you through this part." It may be through unexpected peace, through a verse that lifts your spirit, through a person He sends at the right moment, through a breakthrough you didn't expect, or through a strength that appears even though you didn't ask for it. God carries His children tenderly, like a shepherd carrying a wounded lamb. He lifts you not because you failed, but because He loves you too deeply to let you fall apart. It's important to understand that tired faith does not mean broken faith. Tired faith is still faith. A trembling, "God help me," is still faith. A whispered, "Lord, please," is still faith. Tears on your pillow are still faith. A step forward with shaking legs is still faith. Faith does not have to be loud, perfect, or confident. It simply has to hold on. And even when you can't hold on, God holds you. Some of you have been carrying burdens that were never meant to be carried alone. Some of you have been trying to stay strong for everyone else until you feel empty inside. Some of you have been fighting battles that drained your spirit. Some of you feel like you are praying from a place of exhaustion, not passion. God sees it all, and He says to you right now, "Rest. Lean on me. Let me carry you." You're not falling behind. You're being held. When your faith is tired, God does not step away from the journey. He steps into the journey in a deeper, more intimate way. He guides your next chapter. He strengthens what remains. He breathes life into the parts of you that feel dead. He lifts your head when you cannot lift it yourself. He does not wait for you to be strong again. He is strong for you. And soon, the strength you thought was gone will rise again. The fire you thought went out will reignite. The hope you thought was lost will be restored. You will walk again. You will believe again. You will dream again, not because you forced yourself to, but because God carried you through the valley and placed you gently into your next chapter. The chapter where victory begins to unfold. The moment you let go, God releases what you couldn't reach. There is a sacred moment in every believer's journey when holding on becomes heavier than letting go, when clinging to what is familiar becomes more painful than stepping into what is unknown, and when God gently whispers, "Release it, so I can replace it." This moment of surrender is not weakness. It is the doorway to supernatural movement. It is the moment when heaven steps in with force, acceleration, and divine alignment. And yet, it is often the hardest step to take, because surrender feels like losing control. But in God's hands, surrender is the point where miracles begin. Letting go is painful because we are trained by life to grip people, grip outcomes, grip timelines, grip expectations, grip identities, grip the version of ourselves we outgrew. We cling to what once made sense. We hold on to what once brought comfort. We grasp for what once made us feel safe. And yet, God knows that what was good for one season can become a limitation in the next. So He invites us, not forces us, to release the old so we can receive the new. And this release is not passive, it is a spiritual act of trust. It is saying, God, I choose your plan over my preferences. I choose your timing over my timeline. I choose your wisdom over my understanding. Look at Abraham, who was asked to let go of what was familiar. God told him, leave your country, your relatives, and your father's house. God asked Abraham to release everything that gave him identity and comfort. Not because God wanted him empty, but because God wanted him available. Abraham could not step into the land of promise while holding on to the land of the past. And neither can you. You cannot walk into a new season holding the weight of an old one. At some point, the miracle needs space to manifest. Letting go is not only about releasing things around you, it is about releasing things within you. Fear, doubt, regret, guilt, old versions of yourself. Some of the things God wants you to release are not external, they are internal prisons you've lived in for too long. God says, let go of who you were so I can show you who you are becoming. Many people miss their next chapter because they keep reading the old one. They cannot hear God's new instructions because the noise of old pain keeps speaking louder. But letting go silences the past so destiny can speak clearly again. Some of you are holding on to relationships God already released you from. Some are clinging to opportunities that expired. Some are gripping a season that ended. Some are trying to revive something God intentionally closed. And the more you hold on, the heavier it becomes, because grace only rests on what God is doing now, not what He was doing then. When God moves His hand, you must move your heart. When God closes a door, it is not rejection, it is direction. It is His way of guiding you away from what would limit you and toward what will grow you. Surrender is not losing, it is positioning. It positions you under the flow of God's will. It aligns you with the timing of heaven. It frees your hands so God can place something better in them. The moment you let go, you create a vacancy in your life, a space only God can fill. Tears may fall in the releasing, but peace comes in the replacing. God never asks you to release something without preparing something greater in return. He never subtracts without multiplying. He never prunes without promoting. He never uproots without replanting. Imagine a child grasping a small broken toy, refusing to release it, while the parent waits patiently to give them something far better. The parent cannot place the new toy in the child's hands until the old one is released. That is exactly how many believers live, holding tightly to broken things, thinking they are protecting themselves, not realizing they are preventing God from giving them something whole. God is not trying to take something from you. He is trying to get something to you. Letting go also activates spiritual momentum. Things begin to shift faster. Doors open that were previously locked. Peace flows where anxiety once lived. Guidance becomes clearer. Opportunities begin to recognize your name. When you release what God has been nudging you to surrender, you stop fighting His will and start partnering with it. And partnership with God is the most powerful force on earth. It accelerates you. It aligns you. It ushers you into spaces your own strength could never enter. Your surrender may feel like the end, but in God's eyes, it is the beginning. It is the threshold of breakthrough. It is the point where heaven says, now I can move. It is the place where your hands are finally empty enough to receive. It is the moment when God releases what you could never have reached on your own. The relationship aligned with your purpose, the door designed for your future, the opportunity tailor, made for your calling, the healing your heart has longed for, the breakthrough you prayed for in silence. So if God is asking you to release something or someone, trust that He is not leading you toward loss, but toward life. Trust that His plan is greater than your understanding. Trust that His timing is wiser than your impatience. Trust that letting go is not the end of your story, but the unlocking of it. Because the moment you let go, God releases what you could not reach, and your journey shifts from striving to receiving, from holding tightly in fear to opening wide in faith.